we're familiar with these questions. So what we're aiming to develop right now, come in. Good morning, Liz. What we're aiming to do right now is to develop fluency. Fluency, you know what fluency is, right? Like in a language, fluency is the difference between having to think consciously about what you're going to say versus not needing to devote conscious thought to it and just being able to speak just like that without having to concentrate, right? So we want to develop fluency and speed with regard to these kinds of questions. I've put one out which is already in question 3 because I think question 1 and 2 you guys are fine with, and some of it was in your assumed knowledge booklet. Okay, so this is from memory. It's 3G. Okay, so let's really quickly run through it together and make sure we've got the right practices. Suggestion. What do you guys reckon we should do first here? Mitsu.
I'll put everything on one side.
Okay, I have choice number 1, which is to move everything over to one side or the other, right?
Oh.
Being that this is an inequality, right, and we're trying to solve, do you think I should go to the left or the right? Probably left, right? Probably left. That would make sense, okay? I can move everything over to the left, or alternatively, there's another suggestion. Anyone want to give me another suggestion? I'm not saying one's better than the other, I just want other ways. Right. I could expand? Okay, so I could do some simplification, some form of simplification before I do that, okay? Now just looking at this, do either of these seem better than the other? What do you reckon, Nikita?
I reckon expand would be better and collect.
Why do you think that is?
Because there's nothing common on both sides.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think that's probably right. If you have a look at these two terms in the brackets here, if they were equivalent, then there's going to be a clear benefit to actually transferring everything to one side, right? Because expanding is actually increasing the amount of work. When I look at this, my instinct at least is to expand first. Though, I think it's fine if you wanted to do it the other way. Let's all, for the sake of consistency, expand. So, what do we got over here? The key thing, of course, with inequalities is to watch out for your negatives and or your double negatives where they pop up. So here we're just going to get 8 minus 4x. That's pretty standard. What are we getting over here? Who wants to tell me what the expansion is? Someone hasn't said anything yet. Let's see. Yeah, Rena, why don't you give it a go?
Minus 10 plus 2x.
Great, thank you. No pressure. All right, I can collect my like terms now, and then I can bring everything over to one side as was originally suggested. Clearly, we're going to have to do it eventually. So I've got my 16 minus 4x over here. I've got negative 7 plus 2x over here. Okay, suggestions now? Yeah.
Put x on one side, put the numbers on.
Okay, so generally we want to phrase the x's on the left-hand side, which is what we were kind of implying before, and all of our numbers on the other side. So at this point, because I've done these questions thousands of times, I'm going to do them both simultaneously, but if you're not too sure about it, it's worth doing it over 2 steps. Not like you need to save a huge amount of time. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Subtract 2x. That's going to give me a negative 6x over there. And I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides as well. Come in. Come on, Jimmy. Take a seat. Got to give a warning at least. So anyhow. Alright, what we're just doing is subtracting 16 from both sides, which leaves us with negative 23 on the right hand side. Okay, that's a bit awkward. Just check your numbers because, you know, we kind of sometimes expect numbers to be nice and neat by the end. Does it check out? Were there any numerical errors? Looks pretty okay to me. So now I just need to divide. I'll divide by negative 6. No sense in doing it twice. But because I'm dividing by a negative number, the direction of the inequality is going to have to flip around. Like so. 23 on 6. And we're done. Finished. No big deal. Okay. So, a couple of things. I would look at this, and being that it's linear, okay, which is all the kinds of questions we're going to have a look at, you kind of have an advantage, which is that if you have gone through all of this and everything's been fine, you actually don't need to check your answer, okay, because it's linear. I'll let you have a think about why that's the case, okay? However, if what I had up here was something else, right? If it involved polynomials of some kind like squares or cubics, right? And I had to, you know, if I did something tricky like multiply by the square or something, or square both sides, then you've got to take this answer and you have to make sure it actually satisfies your first line. Okay? I'm just making that as a side note. You won't need to do that in this kind of case because they're linear, but there's your answer. Make sure that you do it. Even though this question doesn't ask us to, I'm just going to, for later questions, say, graph this on a number line. Okay? So here's a number line. Now, being that it's a one-dimensional inequality, it's an inequality in only one variable, right? That's why I have a one-dimensional number line. This is not going to go on a plane, right? So this is going to be an x-axis, right? On a number line, what are the important kinds of numbers you're going to put on there? 0. 0 is the most important number. And then whichever other values are relevant to the inequality. Okay, so 23 on 6, I can just stick it there, and that's enough. I don't need to put any other points on there. Okay, now it's less than, okay, and it's not inclusive. So what should I do on the boundary? It should be an open or a hollow circle, like so. Okay, Nikita.
Sorry, do you prefer if we put the circle on the line or above the line?
Great question. I'm going to encourage you. I'll stop short of saying you have to, but I'm going to encourage you to put the circle right on the line. That means your circle needs to be big enough to do that. And then your line that corresponds to that should also be on the number line, like so. Okay? I'm going to strongly recommend against doing something like this, for instance. I think that's a really bad idea. Now, let me suggest to you, why is it that often people do this? Okay, the main reason is because, well, if you don't want to spend the time, or if your pen's not very good, you don't want to do one of the big, thick lines, it's really hard if you do this, right? Here's your number line, here's your point, and then there's your inequality, your region, right? And it's very hard to see. You can see that's hard to see, right? And obviously, like, it's even easier with a whiteboard marker. With a pencil, it can be quite hard, right? So that's why I had to go and make it really thick, okay? Can anyone suggest to me, not just for an arbitrary reason, but for a mathematical reason, why might this red dot line, why might this be a bad way to go about it? Yeah.
Because you're making it so it's like an area rather than a...
Yeah, good. So you're actually making a statement, right? When I've lifted off the axis, I'm now going into, this is why I highlighted it, I'm going into a second dimension, which is actually something completely different, right? The whole point of this is that there is one dimension. I can only go back and forth. There's no up down here, okay? It's not something like, say, this, right? Which has two dimensions, so that's why you're on a Cartesian plane, okay? I think it's worth taking the extra 1.5 seconds to just draw in a thick arrow and make it on the number lines, okay?